So in my React career, there is this problem that I've had to solve many years ago that was legit the hardest problem that I've had to solve at the time. This is a problem that upon solving it, it gave me the fundamental knowledge to be able to progress from being an intermediate developer to a senior developer, because I took the solution and the knowledge that I got from solving this problem and I applied it to the project that I was building at the time, and that was the key for my own progression to the next level of React developer. And in this video, I want to share with you that specific problem, and I want to show you the solution that I came up with and then just talk about it, because you're going to see it's not so black and white, it's not so trivial, and understanding the nuances of this potential solution as opposed to others, because there are others, is ultimately a key to becoming a good React developer. And speaking of becoming a better React developer, I want to sponsor my own video, why not, and talk to you about my free newsletter called Import React, which you can use to stay up to date with all the latest and greatest in the React world, and also get cool tips and tricks and some unique stuff that I share on there that I'm not going to share anywhere else. If you're interested, I've left a link for you in the description down below. Now let's talk about the problem. All right, cool. So let's begin. So here I have a representation of what I was dealing with at the time. I was essentially building a social media application, and I had a bunch of feeds that were showing posts, right? This is typical for a traditional social media application. I had the home feed, for example, I had the trending feed, and then I had the user feed. Now, the important detail about this feed right now is, as you can see here, we have a duplicate of the same posts in multiple feeds. For example, we have here in the home feed, we have a post from John Doe, hello world. And then we also have that same post on the user feed, John Doe Hello World, because this is simulating being the actual feed of John Doe. So we have the same post in multiple feeds. And then we have the same thing with the trending, right? So we have this trending post number 1 over here. And then we also have it in the home feed, because let's assume that it was just recently posted. So that's our constraint. And now the actual problem is, well, I hope that you can tell, it is this big edit button that we have here on each individual post. When we make an edit here, let's say to this post over here, and we actually change something, like we can do update it, and then we save this, we want to have that update also be immediately applied on any potential other place, other feed where this post might be. And you can see that that actually worked, right? Because I already implemented the code for this. But at the time, I did not know how to efficiently solve this problem, because it's really not that simple to solve. And here's why. Let's look at the code that is running this entire feed right now. So here we have a constant of our feeds, right? We have home, trending, and user. And then we're using React Query, which, by the way, at the time, I was not using React Query, and that made my life so much harder than it had to be, because React Query actually makes solving this problem relatively easy. But essentially, we're using the use queries hook, and then we're mapping over each individual feed, and we're creating a query with a query key for each specific feed. And the reason I'm showing you this is because if you go back here to the application, it actually impacts how we make those updates. Now, because we're using React Query, what React Query actually is under the hood, it's called a document store, which means that every single feed has its own data and has the full data for each specific entity. So this post over here, we have the full data. We have the actual content of the post, any potential title, the created at date, right? Whatever properties we have the post, we have them there. And we also have the same thing with the user. We have the full details of the user here. But then in this feed over here, we have a copy of that same record with the same data. That is how React Query works. That is the cache that you hear about often with React Query. They store multiple copies of that same data. So then if you want to come here and make an edit, you have to then make sure that you propagate your edit across every single copy, because again, everything has a copy. So if you have a post in the home feed, you want to do that and make sure you update it there. If that post was potentially in the trending feed, because again, you cannot determine this at the code level, right? It's something that is dynamic. If the post was there, you have to go in there and also make those updates there, and any other potential place that the post might be. And even then, even if a post might be on the trending feed, maybe it's on page number 5. and the user specifically has not scrolled that far, so the post isn't there. So you also want to handle that case as well. And you can quickly see that this is becoming very complex because in my application, I had way more than just 3 feeds. And I also had the detail page of the post. You can click on the post, you can see the details. I had comments that I wanted to show, and I wanted to make updates on the post, on the comments, and on the user, right? Imagine you want to update your username and you want to go in and then make the updates across every post that the user might be in, across every post that the user might have commented in, on their user actual profile page, right? There's a lot of places to think about, and it's a big mess. So now let me show you one potential solution, the one that comes almost for free by React Query. So I'm going to go in here into Edit Post, and we're going to open up this component over here. So over here, there's 2 functions. One is the simple way, and I guess the most naive way, but it doesn't mean that it's not a good way. You can probably get away with this for most projects, and most projects actually do this. The second one is a little bit more involved, a little bit more complex, and we're going to get to it in just a moment. The first one is pretty simple. You can just invalidate using the query client, invalidate any query that has posts when you make an update, right? So this is the handle edit simple. So whenever you press that save button over here, you can just save, and then you can just call this invalidate queries. And then what React Query is going to do is every single query that has posts as the query key, which if I go back here to our app, all of them do, are going to get invalidated, refetched, and then we're going to get the updated data, and it's going to be shown wherever we actually have that post there, right? So that's a simple approach without you having to do anything specific. The only problem with that approach is that it will take some time because you have to wait for the request to be refetched for the data to be updated. So it is not going to be instant, and that is one of the trade-offs that you're doing, but then again, you're getting a lot of simplicity for it. The second approach, which is a little bit more involved, and this is the one that is actually running, so when I actually made this update, this was the code that ran that, is that you actually go inside of React Query, inside of every single feed, and you manually update the data. So we're taking here feeds, .for each, and then we're mapping over each feed, and then we're just using the query client once again to set the query data for that specific feed. And here we're getting the old data, right? So we can actually keep all of the things that haven't changed consistent. And then if we have a post here that matches by its ID, we're going to return all the properties of the post, and then we're going to update its content, right? So now we're going into every single feed, finding the post. If it is there, we're going to make an update to it, and then we're just setting that as the query data of React Query. Now, this is a really, really good solution. It's clean, and the fact that we have this query client over here from React Query makes our life a lot simpler. Unfortunately, at the time, I did not have this, and I could not use and rely upon this, which arguably would have made my life a lot simpler and would have solved my problem then and there. But it's fine. I don't regret this because I learned so much along the way. Now, you might think that this is perfectly fine, right? But it's actually not. There's a lot more complexity because this code right here actually assumes that we want to make the same update to every single post everywhere that it is, which may not always be the case. For example, let's say that instead of the trending feed, this was a favorites feed. And let's say that instead of this edit button, we had a heart to favorite the post. Well, if we were on the trending feed and we had here actually the favorite feed, sorry, and we had a post that we favorited and then we unfavorited that post, we would expect that post to disappear from this feed, right? That makes sense. But if we had that same post in the home feed, we would not expect that post to disappear from the home feed by unfavoriting it, right? So already using this code here would not work because we would make the same update across every single feed. So now you have to then introduce complexity to handle both cases. But then there's more. What if the post is actually not in the feed? What if we're on a specific detail? So we click on the post and we just see that posts were not in the feed. That means that we can actually not map old data.map because it is not a feed. So we need to change our code to also handle that case, right? And then the list goes on, right? To actually make this work, you need to put a lot of complexity and make sure that you handle every single case specifically to actually make that work. And actually, in my upcoming Advanced Patterns React course, we deal with this specific problem, but we have a lot more feeds and a lot more complexity, which you can still solve, and you can still do it if you manage to write clean code and have proper design patterns, which of course I teach in the course. So this is not a deal breaker. You can still do it with this code. You just need to write a lot of code and you need to add complexity. And that is the trade-off of this approach. But now let me show you my solution at the problem, which is completely different. It is very efficient, but I would not implement this solution today. So let's close all of these here. Let's go to main, and I'm going to comment out all of this code, and I'm going to uncomment my normalized app code, and I'm going to open this code. This one is pretty similar. We have the same data. I can go here, I can show you, we have the same feed over here. But now if I make an update, let's come here, let's do updated and save, and we can see our update is happening here as well. So what is a normalized app? Well, a normalized app essentially means, as opposed to a document store, it means that instead of storing duplicates of everything, what we're doing is for each individual entity, so a post, a user, whatever else we might have, we only store one unique copy of that entity, and then everywhere else where we want to show that entity, we reference it by its ID. So that means that all of these things here are actually not posts, but they are in fact arrays of IDs, and we have the post stored somewhere else, which means that if we come here to make an update, we just have to make that update and update one single post, and then it doesn't matter where that post is being shown, or if it's not even visible at all, we will be able to immediately get the update because we are referencing that post by its ID, and there's only one unique copy of it across the entire project. And this is what this looks like. So we are going to open up here this use post store, and now we're no longer going to be using React Query, and that is important. We're going to be using Zustand and our own custom solution. And one of the custom solutions that we're going to use is this goat of a package normalizer, which literally saved my ass when I was trying to solve this problem. Normalizer, if you come here, is a library that essentially normalizes your data. You can feed into it any sort of unnormalized data, so duplicates of everything that you would typically get from React Query, and then you just provide it here a schema, the user schema like I have here, and then a post schema, right? You define your schema just like you would a typical database, and then it will normalize the state for you and put everything into unique entities, and then reference everything by its ID automatically for you without you having to do it. It's wonderful. The only unfortunate thing is that it is no longer maintained. So this repository is read-only, so there's no new updates coming in. The last update was 3 years ago, but this library, if you still want to use it, is still stable and you can still use it. I mean, I used it now and it's perfectly fine. It's not really a complex problem to solve and it doesn't really change all that much. But you can see here it's used by 20,000 people and a bunch more, right? This is a legit library that even Dan Abramov contributed to, right? It saved my ass at the time. So let me show you how it works. So we have here in Zustand our initial state, right? So we have post here, which is going to be an object with the post ID as a key, and then the post as a value. We're doing the same thing for the user. And then we have our feeds over here, which we have home, trending, and user. And these, as you can see, are arrays of numbers. So these are not going to hold the actual post, but they're going to hold the ID of the post, which is going to reference a post in here in this object. And then we're creating our store here. And then we have this fetch all feeds function, which is going to fetch all of our feeds. So home, trending, and user. Then using that data, we are going to normalize the data that we receive from the backend using the schema, and that is going to give to us a actual normalized object. And then we take that and then we do here, we spread home normalized.entities. The entities are going to be the unique entities that we got from our data .posts. We're going to spread those into our post object and do the same for all of our feeds. Then we're going to do the same thing with the users because those are also going to be normalized. And then in the state, we just set our post over here. And then in our feeds, we just store this home normalized.result, which is going to be an array of IDs of specific posts. And here I have a console log. So let's actually inspect that and let's see what is being logged. So if I go here and I refresh and I open up the console here, this is going to be our home feed. So just this feed over here. I can open it and let's see what we have. So we have entities and then we have result. Result is our array of IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's what we're actually using here to actually show our individual posts. And then we have our entities, which is going to be an object that has posts and users. And you see here, we have every single post, ID 1, content, ID, user, user ID, right? Even the user here is no longer as an object, but it's been extracted in this custom entities here. And we have a unique copy of each individual user. Don't worry about this user ID. That's my mistake. It shouldn't be there. It's really the user that we care about. And this is really cool because this makes life a lot simpler. We store only one copy of the entity and then we just make an update. We update that one copy and that is it. That's all that we have to do. and it just works. Now, here's the thing. This might seem to you like this is the perfect solution and we should just adopt this solution across the board. But like I said, I would not necessarily use this solution today if I had the same problem. Because if you notice something about this solution, as great as it is, we actually lost React Query. We cannot use React Query with this solution because React Query is not compatible with the solution. It's not a normalized store. We couldn't even use Redux Toolkit Query or SWR because those all function the same way. They are document stores. And so we had to sacrifice React Query and all the benefits that React Query gives us just to get this normalized benefits here. And is it worth it? Well, in my opinion, not necessarily. Because if you go back here to edit posts, right, the previous solution that we had, this is not that complicated. Even if we have to do custom functionality here to handle multiple cases, even if we in the future want to add multiple feeds, right, and different new functionalities, the cost and the trade-off of actually managing this with this code is not high enough for us to ditch all the other benefits of React Query for most use cases. In my use case at the time, since I wasn't using React Query to begin with, this was an easy solution and I just implemented this, right? But if I was using React Query, I would think again and I would not necessarily implement this. And this is actually what we did in the Advanced Patterns React course. We actually evaluated both of these decisions and saw which one makes the most sense for the project and which trade-off were we most willing to actually put up with. Were we willing to actually put up with the complexity of managing this ourselves, or were we willing to put up with not using React Query to not deal with the complexity of having a document store instead of normalized state? And just like I teach in the course, knowing the difference and understanding the nuance between both of these approaches and their trade-offs, and then using that to make the right decision for the project is what is going to make you a senior React developer. Because when I understood this, when I solved this problem and then went out and actually built my social media application with this knowledge, that is what unlocked me to really consider myself a senior developer. Because a senior developer will understand all of these trade-offs, will understand the different ways of solving a problem, because there's always more than one way to solve a problem, and will understand how to come to the decision of which trade-offs makes the most sense to accept for the project. And trust me, there's always going to be trade-offs. So really, understanding this is super, super important. In the course, we spend so much time actually working with this approach and making all of this code to make this as easy as possible for us to do. And in the end, we can just add any type of feed in any type of way that we want to update it. We have a simple API that we created ourselves, simple patterns, to handle these updates super, super simply, even though we don't have a normalized store and we're dealing with a traditional document store, because the benefits of React Query far outweigh the complexity of handling these updates over here. So that's it. That's what I had for this video. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to leave it a big thumbs up. You can also click here to subscribe, which you should. It's completely free. Or you can click here to watch a different video of mine that YouTube seems to think that you're really going to enjoy. And with that being said, my name has been Darius Kozan. This is Kozan Solutions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.